Hello and welcome to Progressive Mindset, the podcast for entrepreneurs looking to progress themselves and their business. I'm Bradley Monday.
And I'm Jason Kemsley. And we're going to jump into what I think is quite a fun topic, actually. We're going to jump into talking about how do we help the people that work with us, for us, in whatever context, to thrive? How do we help this next generation? Maybe we're bringing into the business, maybe some older generation. How do we build that culture, that type of business that enables people to have the platform to really accelerate their career, or maybe actually just reach things that, or give them opportunities that they might not otherwise have? And this in turn creates quite a slick business, but also a business that people want to work for, right?
Absolutely. And many of the things that you just mentioned there, I think have to come with some sincerity. Is you can't fake a lot of this stuff. I absolutely love this topic because this is where I get my kicks. I think is I love seeing people succeed from a selfish perspective. That is what gives me an endorphin releases when I see the people within our business reach the goal that they've set out on and that sort of stuff. And I spend a lot of time understanding what those goals are, even though I'm not directly influencing them. I want to know how we as a business are helping those people to get there.
And that's probably a key first. You take an interest in things, even if they're not related to what the business is involved in. Is that fair to say, based on what you said? So the people that you manage and talk to, you care actively, and I know you do, but I'm asking you for the purpose of people listening. You're saying you actively care about their interests and goals outside of the four walls of what this business does.
For sure. So what we do look at and what we've been known to do is support people along a trajectory that we actually know ends up not being with our business. So and actively investing in that, paid training courses and those kind of things. So hear me out. Finding, especially in the modern workplace, finding engaged people that are engaged in where your business is growing, it's a tough gig.
Yeah.
And having someone that is you're helping get to where they want to go, it's amazing how much engagement that actually creates in whatever they're involved in along the way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And it's way better to have maybe 18 months of someone super engaged until they get to that goal, and then you shake hands and you part ways because they've gone on to do what they needed to do, but they've also helped you to attain your goals as a business throughout that 18 months.
And so just on that quickly, and I know the answers obviously to all of these, but for many people possibly listening that have had or may have that person that has goals, and those goals very clearly show they're not going to be of the business, their first thought may be they're not worth investing in. But what you're referencing and talking about, and I know we've seen, you've seen, is actually you get a bit more out of them during their term, but also what they do add back into the company culture during that period is more beneficial than not investing in them and having them sucking something out of the culture.
I agree with that, and it's much better than having someone that didn't have that drive and didn't have those. You want people that have got this drive and those goals because they bring energy.
Yep.
It's what we do right early in our recruitment process is actually ask what those goals are. If someone comes along and says, I want to be an astronaut in 10 years' time, we don't have a lot to give there. I know nothing about that. And it's just way off. And they're probably not the right person. It's got to be somewhat related to the field, right? And you've got to be able to contribute to that goal to make that worthwhile. So I'm not suggesting you just go and take on anyone that's got a goal and try and help them along. It's got to be relevant to the field.
But even in that scenario, I can't help you get towards that goal, but I can show you what some hard work, what accomplishment, what exams, or there's always something, I guess, but you want to try and align it as much as possible. And I guess in that, and this is a bit strange because I know the answers to these, but in that interview, you're being fairly transparent straight back with them when they have those goals.
For sure. If it's a goal that we can help out with, I'm very open from the beginning. Hey, what you're describing isn't necessarily a role with us, but here's what that roadmap might look like, because you need them to buy into what you're putting out, if that makes sense. Otherwise, that's not going to gel. You want to find the right sort of people that get it.
Okay. And that type of person, that's the start. Does that honesty and transparency mean 6 months in, 12 months in, 18 months in, you get that honesty and transparency back?
So sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think as the employer, you can't always expect your employee to be giving you that in terms of, hey, my time has come. I'm going to be moving off and those kind of things. Sometimes you can create a culture that drives that, but it doesn't always work. I think people are all, especially in the US, where it's much easier to part ways with an employee. You can understand the hesitancy of, hey, I don't really want to share you my plans. I'll tell you when I'm going, as opposed to when I'm planning to start looking and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Okay. And it's interesting because you get to see a lot of this all the time, and I would hope to say and think that we can talk about this as qualified people, because I think we've become very well known as an organisation, as a place of opportunity and a platform, and actually somewhere that you will have some longevity because they will support you to your goals. And so our average tenure, just for the people listening, because otherwise they're going to wonder why on earth should we listen to these two people, our average tenure and our staff retention percentage, tenure above, percentage below the industry average by quite a significant amount.
It's literally the only reason we have a business in our space, because if we had the same problems as the people that we're serving, then we just wouldn't have a business. So it's kind of what we're built on. It's the fundamentals. And I think when you get that right, the other thing that I wanted to add at this stage was those people that do come and they've got these goals that aren't within your business. It's amazing how over a period of time, just having a nurturing environment where people are enjoying what they do, they actually change. Where you see people's goals change.
Yep.
And actually, you know what? I know I started out over here, but what I've seen over the last 6-12 months has really made me have a rethink. And actually, this feels like a better path for me. And just because they want to remain in that environment. I think we've all had workplaces where it's not been a nice environment to be in.
Absolutely.
And so actually people want to stay around for that as well.
And I think that's my belief around this is I had, other people had, I'm sure you had an idea or a progression plan in mind, but I think at the root of it, we all just want purpose. We all want to feel like we're listened to. We want to feel like we're making a difference. And you can do that in almost any organisation if you're given a voice, if you're given some flexibility in terms of where you head. Is actually quite often we tend to pick things that connotate to us the type of lifestyle or the type of way we want to be treated. But you can achieve that in most businesses, right? We've kind of broken the mold a little bit in that.
As long as you're given the platform to do it. We often describe it as we create this platform for growth and development. I actually had an email off of a potential recruit just leaving university who happens to be friends with an ex-employee that's not been with us for a good few years, and in her cover letter she said, I spoke to my friend who mentioned him by name, who used to work with you, and he describes your platform as this great platform for growth, and suggests that this is where I should be as my stepping stone. They were looking to get into the industry, and that's awesome to see when someone's...
that's an ex-employee.
Yeah.
Right. That is which is, I think we possibly might take for granted a little bit, but that's not a normal scenario.
No, and I mention that because going back to you've really got to want to deliver this. You've really got to buy into people. That gives me a buzz. I love the fact that people that have been on that journey with us and they've since gone are still saying awesome things.
Yep.
Years down the line. That's fantastic. That's where you want to be. So I would suggest if that's not a trait that you identify within yourself, then as your business grows, you definitely need to bring someone in operationally that is that way inclined, so that they can drive that. Because I'm going to go back to, if it's not sincere, I think it's very difficult to lay that out as a real platform that works. If actually there's the hidden agenda of, I'm just doing this because we want to make money, or there's another go outside of, hey, we really do just want to see people thrive.
It's interesting. You normally talk about reading. I've read a couple of articles over the last 2-3 months, and there's a continued resonating theme amongst them all, which is moving into this next era. Authenticity is going to be what dominates the winners. And it was talking about content creators, business owners. It was going from every different sort of path.
Mm-hmm.
Banks. We're now seeing this new age of banks, and you're moving to the one that you think's got your back more than maybe the other one. The other stuff's kind of a bit irrelevant. And it was talking a lot about authenticity, and I think that's prominent here. Is you've got to want to do it for the right reason, because you will get caught out. On the topic of what you said, just like it encourages people that want to thrive, they want to progress, is it fair to say it weeds out the ones that don't have any interest in coming to work and working?
Certainly use it as we talk consistently along the recruitment process about what we expect to be delivering to people, because it also means that we expect an amount in response to that. And actually, you do come here and you graft, because that's the only form of growth. Is you don't grow if you're lazy. And almost use it to scare people off, to be honest. Is, hey, if you don't align to that, we're not the place for you to be. And to go back to what you were talking about, how you were seeing articles around authenticity, what we've created has come so naturally. And that's why I talk about bringing someone in who it comes natural to, because the moment that you're reading about authenticity and trying to create that in your business, if it's forced, is it really authentic? And it for a very long time, I didn't like talking about culture, because I saw people talking about how to almost reverse engineer a culture that works. And I'm like, what we've created has been a very natural thing. And I think you need people that drive natural things. And I'm sounding like a broken record here, because I keep coming back to, hey, if it didn't have that natural approach to it, then it's probably not authentic. So hopefully some of the things we're talking about allow those that are already on the path to further it, or otherwise find the right people to come and deliver that for you.
Absolutely. And we've kind of discussed, I think, one of the main points, which is it starts at the top or bottom, depending on which way round you want to do your org chart or whatever, is the creating or helping people to thrive starts with your intent, and then trickles down or up in the applicable way. One of the big things that I think we do very well, but you see this a lot in we had recently the conversation KPIs, OKRs. There's different frameworks in which you can measure people, etc. Is we're moving towards that more outcome based judgment or results based, rather than maybe the in the weeds. Is we don't mind how you do what you do necessarily. That we've got a process, we've got a framework or whatever. This is just what is expected of you as a result, and how you want to get there, whether it's stood on 1 foot or whatever the scenario is. That's a huge part to what we've done, but also very many modern businesses with remote working. Hey, you're 100 miles away, maybe you're in another hemisphere. This is what we expect of you, and here's how we know that you're delivering, and we don't mind how you do it.
Yeah, and that's still very alien to many people. We bring people into our organisation and give them that freedom, and they still keep coming for approval for certain things. It doesn't matter how many times you say, whatever. They're not coming to you for advice or for guidance. They're coming for approval. I don't need to approve this. Yep. You've got this, and it really can be alien. So I really don't think we've got this in the masses yet, where people really are being left to their own devices, being nurtured, and you're there as a supporting arm when needed. But otherwise, hey, we'll come back together and we'll regularly review whether you're delivering. And otherwise, off you go and do it.
It's that ask for forgiveness, not permission quote, right, that we all probably hear so often, but it's very, very tough to just sit back and not micromanage or not jump into the detail. If you've got remote workers, it's quite a difficult concept for many of the people I've seen to not go and check their online at X time, or hey, what you working on? If they are behind, or there's certain factors, then those types of, hey, I'm here to help, how can I help you, etc. But stepping back, it takes time, and I think that is something you can learn, unlike the authenticity.
Yeah, agreed. It's trust, right? And trust is created over a period of time. And yeah, the new modern world of work where we're all remote almost requires trust out the gate. And yeah. I think that's probably a whole episode in itself. One of the things I was keen for us to dig a little bit deeper into in this episode was the idea of having a culture of succession planning.
Yes.
So let's get into that a little bit, if that's all right with you. And I love the idea of, in order to be able to move up in an organization, you have to have found your successor. You have to have gone and mentored and built someone who's going to step into your role, so you're not leaving a hole.
Yep.
And more so the fact that in many organizations, and again, I think we've all probably worked in one where there's that person that was almost like the oracle. They knew everything, but trying to get that information,
they don't let go.
Yeah, trying to get that information was like trying to get blood out of a stone, and that's why they remained there. Actually, that can be quite a limiting factor to an individual. Is, well, if you're that valuable in your role where you are, because no one else is able to step into those shoes, how can any business afford to elevate you?
Absolutely.
Your only way is to move on somewhere else, right? You're almost limiting yourself within an organization. So creating that culture of, there's many factors, right? You need to make sure that person feels safe. Many people do it for job security reasons. They feel like
it's usually personality, insecurity, or something where they don't feel like.
But and yeah, some of that is insecurity in an individual, but quite often that's something that we as business owners, as managers, depending on where we sit in various places as we grow and go through our careers, we must be instilling that behavior in individuals, right? You don't go into the world of work and immediately worry for your position. That's something that is trained in someone because of the type of manager that they have. So you build up a fear.
Absolutely. No, completely agree. It's and you kind of want to try and spot that at interview stage a little bit if you can. I used to be the exact type of person, and I won't mind you agreeing, where for me to feel like I was adding value, I had to know so much and not let other people know it, or not let other people know it, but I'd have to be the one that they'd come to me, and then that feels like I have a sense of purpose, and there's also a maturity aspect there. It wasn't until I matured quite significantly, I would probably say, that I realised most of the people that I manage have to be better than me at what they're doing than I would be, and that is actually a good manager. Whereas growing up, you think, if I know everything, I'm a good employee.
Yeah. So having had that the joy of seeing you go through that process of growth, I think it was slightly different to wanting to hoard information, always willing to share, and you've always sort of mentored others, but it is that, don't worry, I'll do it. I think for you it was always you know what, it's going to be quicker and it's going to get done better if I do it, and therefore I'll just own it. So it might have been a lot more of the, taking on a lot of people's monkeys, as the saying goes, as opposed to having them walk out with it, having given them the the tools and the access and that sort of stuff. So I think there's probably multiple reasons that people do what they do, but it's molding people, and like I say, yours comes through growth.
Absolutely.
Whereas hoarders of information that don't want to give out and mentor others tend to get worse as they go through their careers rather than better. So what are some of the things that we can do to either stop that from happening in the first place or remove it from people and start to undo some of those bad traits? I guess I'll kick off with people have got to feel safe in their environments, and this is, I think, the joy of being a small business. It is quite rare that a small business is going to need less people. It's much more common in large enterprise where they'll go through a period of funding, and then when that comes to an end or the investors start wanting to see a payout, they just go through a cull. That actually doesn't happen so much at small business. Redundancies happen when actually you're going through a tough time or things haven't quite worked out. So it's a little bit different. So just building that element of security, and we encourage all of our people to almost work towards automating themselves out of a role, because actually we're not going to need, even if that happens, we're not going to need any less people because we're a growing, thriving business, and that's what you're driving towards by doing that. And so it's creating an environment where you're encouraging people to actually share and almost make themselves redundant. That's a sign of a great employee is, Absolutely. Hey, you know what? Everyone else is managing to facilitate, but I was the one that got them there. There's way more value in being able to bring more people into the business and make them as good as you than there is holding that all and just being the one.
And that links very much into what I was going to say, which is straight, pure and simply, but doesn't happen enough, transparency. Is if you can't see them progressing anytime soon, having that conversation, what they could do to change it. Mm-hmm. We've had, just in case they listen to this, I'll be careful how I describe it. I don't want them to know. I remember I'd done the original interview for this person. I thought they were a good option. Came in, weren't so good. You had quite a sort of D-Day conversation with them and said, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. In a month's time, we're probably going to let you go if this continues. Mm-hmm. And we have had since a thriving person. I think they're a great life because I think they found a new version of themselves that they quite enjoy, who has accelerated through the career path in our industry. And so I guess what I'm saying, to take it back to the root, is transparency negatively as quickly as you can and transparency positively as quickly as you can. With the big thing for me being, if it ever comes as a shock to them, you haven't done your job correctly as a manager.
I'm big on this. And I think the person you're talking about will actually, should they listen to this, will know exactly who they are, because they actually thanked me for that conversation not so long ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I can't remember why it came up, but I think we were in a meeting together, or one little one-to-one, and they actually brought that scenario up. And yeah, it was to give a little more context, it was someone that we saw an awful lot of potential in, but just wasn't quite getting it in a couple of areas. And despite multiple conversations of trying to encourage that, you got to the point where, okay, we've just got to come out and say, you know what, the writing's on the wall unless you make a drastic change. And they knew, hang on a minute, it's time. I either make a change or I'm gone. And I've had that conversation a multitude of times, and it's only ever gone the way I didn't want it to go once.
Which is interesting. That many would consider that a hard conversation to have as a manager, to have that type of conversation. Hey, the way you're going, you're probably not going to have a role in a month or whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's so horrible and hard. But if we look at anything in life, going to the gym, running a marathon, all these things are hard, but they bring the best satisfaction, the best results, or the best fruits of the hardness that we went through to get to it. Mine was definitely just being that open book. being that open, and also with the business. I think that's going back to your security and safety point. Hey, this is the business. This is where we're at. This is what we're doing over the next 6 months. This is what we're doing over the year. We were talking quite a bit about goal setting, etc. Is having that internal, so they, for a lot of individuals, they want to feel proud of where they work, and
for sure,
if they see the business moving in a positive direction, there is a significantly less chance of them trying to hoard or become that go-to person, because they're looking at the next role that they might want on the next piece of the journey. And so it's just about we're all on this train together, whatever analogy you want to use, and keeping them, a lot of people want to go and work for Tesla because of their marketing.
Yep.
And where
the
people
good things
think
that
they're going.
Yeah, absolutely. The things they're achieving, you want to be part of a high achieving team, right?
Absolutely.
That's what gives people growth. And just back to your earlier point there, where you were talking about the honesty, even when that conversation is difficult. I've got two things on that. Is one, I think actually having to live with yourself when you shied away from having that hard conversation, but then ended up letting that person go anyway. Living with yourself after that is actually way harder than going, look, we're not where we need to be as a collective. How do we work towards this to ensure that you thrive? Then if they do go, that's, hey, I really worked with them and I really tried, and they knew what was going on, and you've been very transparent. And the second thing is, I actually talk to every new recruit that we have, only for a short period now, but in that short period that I have with them when they first join, I give them that promise that if there is a problem, they're always going to know about it. And it goes back to how we opened this in terms of, hey, actually, you build security by going, you don't have to worry or second guess about feedback that you're getting or what's going to go on. Is you're always going to know if there's a problem.
Yep.
So you know when you need to get your guard up. Otherwise, you're golden, and it builds that trust to be able to actually go out and make mistakes and grow and all of that sort of good stuff.
Absolutely, and you see it so often, right? You've put an ad out because you're looking for someone to replace the person you've got, because they're not quite what you want them to be, but they don't know they're not quite what you want them to be. And so you're just in this constant cycle of people that don't quite fit what you want, but they don't know that they don't fit what you want. And it's a super tough thing as well. It possibly also gets better and better with experience. But if we just strip it back to the basics to finish this off, is doing it with the right intent. I mean, we're going back to kind of buzzwords here, but doing it with the right intent, being consistent with both good and bad, and being completely open book. Hey, it's not working right now for me. Hey, it's working right now for me. It's typically possibly the three pillars to what we've built and what.
And I guess what we're encouraging for helping people to thrive. Before we wrap up, I wanted to. There was one bit that we didn't touch on succession, and certainly because it's still relatively new, and most people haven't experienced it. Sometimes you can, I guess, force that culture a little bit, and that is by making it a prerequisite to promotion. Is you have to have found that individual that you're going in. You have to have mentored them to fill your gap. So you can almost build that into when you're talking about people's goals to move up through your business, identifying who they're working with to bring up and how that's going, and support them through that. And over a period of time, it just becomes your environment. You then that little bit of teasing it in the origin means that actually it just becomes natural. When you bring new people in, they just experience this, and it becomes part of working at your organization. So I think because it's so difficult, finding ways and tools to sort of ease people into the unfamiliar territory by making it a requirement.
So you've just reminded me of one thing quickly. one big bugbear I have is, and I've seen it before, where you have the one-to-one forms or the management framework forms for templates, and you'll have the what are they good at, what could you be better at. Why are we sugarcoating this? What are you good at? What is not working for us right now?
Yep.
And I don't like to be as brutal, and you don't have to pull it as brutal, but with the frameworks and the way these have been kind of wired for the last 5-10 years is very rare, especially in corporate world. And I've sat in, you know, a very large business where it's all templated when you have the one-to-ones and stuff, and I would have this is what you're good at, and this is what we think you could do better. It just doesn't have the same gravity, but it also doesn't have any room on the sheet for, hey, these two things you're doing are really not working for us as a business.
Yeah.
And by the way, the first you're going to hear about them is when they become too big a problem, because everything we're doing one-to-one is we're trying to shy away from any negatives at all. The negatives can usually be turned into very good positives at the same time.
Agreed. And I think the first thing that I would recommend is taking that form and tearing it up and not using it. You might want to do that maybe once a year so that you've got some things documented if you need it for certifications that you've got in terms of ISO or similar. But otherwise, your one-to-ones with your team, it needs to be a two-way conversation.
It's engaging, not looking at a form, filling it in.
Yeah, it's not a tick box exercise. Have maybe some key questions, like you say, what's not working right now, what is working right now, to drive a conversation. But otherwise, it doesn't need to be about documenting where they are and that sort of stuff. It needs to be about what's working for them, what's working for the business, and driving it forward.
The business's opportunity to raise things. Predominantly, that should be for your employee. That is your employee's hour, half hour to raise any concerns, problems they have, and then yours to go back with points, right? Whereas most people look at it as an employer, this is my opportunity to see what they want. Do they want another pay rise? Do they want this? So flipping it on their head, and I guess I keep saying to wrap up, but so looking at this through the employee lens as opposed to the employer lens of these engagements, these one-to-ones, these catch-up points. Is there for the employee to share as much as they are?
For sure. I wish I'd have bought the stat for. I saw one the other day that talked about how employees get incredibly anxious about one-to-ones. They don't enjoy them.
Yep.
This is meant to be, like you say, it's meant to be for you. It's meant to be a positive way of giving you that opportunity to talk about where's next, where's your growth coming from, what's maybe not working, and allow you to feed back into the business. Most places don't do that. So rip up your forms. Don't make it tick.
Well, it's around a boardroom table. We're very corporate, and I quite like the idea of a bit more a walk and a one-to-one or something.
Yeah. Walk and a one-to-one. I like it.
I like doing what makes the person feel comfortable so that they share the most.
For sure. All right.
And on that note, we'll see you on the next episode.
Goodbye.